Kelly Wright. We do have a lot of news. We'll start with trade. The president making this announcement that he plans to impose sweeping new tariffs. He did so at the White House earlier this week.
People have no idea how badly our country has been treated by other countries. Without steel and aluminum, your country's not the same. And we need it. We need it even for defense, if you think. I mean, we need it for defense. We need great steel makers, great aluminum makers.
Since then, some countries have threatened to retaliate, and there is some concern from the president's own party that the move could have a negative effect on the economy.
No trade war has ever worked. We don't want to make America 1930 again, and the forgotten men and women of America don't want to be drafted into a trade war.
Molly Hennenberg picks up the story now live from Washington. What's the latest, Molly?
Hi, Connell. President Trump intends to sign an executive order next week adding a 25% tax to imported steel and a 10% tax to imported aluminum, in part to counter other countries such as China overproducing steel and dumping it onto the U.S. market. President Trump says he's trying to save the American steel industry and to fight back against an $800 billion trade deficit. The president tweeted today, quote, "The United States has an $800 billion yearly trade deficit because of our very stupid trade deals and policies. Our jobs and wealth are being given to other countries that have taken advantage of us for years. They laugh at what fools our leaders have been. No more." The details are expected to be released next week, and it's possible there could be carve-outs that exempt certain countries from these tariffs. But free trade Republicans say tariffs are not the answer. Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee called the tariffs, quote, "a huge job-killing tax hike on American consumers. While I am sympathetic to the issues facing domestic steel manufacturers, there must be a better way to address the steel industry's concerns, and I hope Congress and the executive branch can identify an alternative solution before these tariffs are finalized next week." The United Steelworkers Union says it's been fighting for action like this for decades to ensure that, quote, cheaters are held accountable. But that labor union also represents some steelworkers in Canada and is asking that Canadian steel be exempted from these tariffs. Connell?
A lot of lobbying and more still to come. Molly, thanks. Julie.
So meanwhile, the president is returning from a trip to Florida where he met with major GOP donors to help raise money for his re-election run in 2020. The fundraiser coming on the heels of what was a rough week for the White House. Ellison Barber has more from West Palm Beach, Florida.
President Trump left Mar-a-Lago this afternoon. He was only in Florida for about 24 hours. Last night, he went to a dinner with RNC donors. He seemingly played some golf this morning and then spoke to those donors again before getting on Air Force One and heading back to D.C. On Twitter, he's been talking about trade and doubling down on his tariff plans for steel and aluminum imports. President Trump has faced a lot of criticism in regards to that proposal from members of his own party to world leaders. In fact, he's threatening more taxes on the EU if they increase taxes on American imports, as one EU leader suggested they would do in response to the possible steel and aluminum tariffs. Trump is not backing away from the proposal. He believes these tariffs are necessary and important, and he continues to say that even though right now the criticism seems to outweigh the praise. But this week, the White House, specifically the people in it, have been capturing headlines, at times overshadowing policy. White House Communications Director Hope Hicks announced that she plans to leave her job at the White House in the coming weeks. Hicks was one of the president's closest advisors. She resigned the day after testifying before the House Intelligence Committee. White House officials say she'd been considering leaving well before this week. The White House is denying rumors of two other potential exits. They're pushing back on reports that said economic advisor Gary Cohn could be leaving soon because he's unhappy with the president's tariff proposal. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders also pushing back on reports that NSA advisor H.R. McMaster is about to be forced out.
General McMaster is not going anywhere. As the president said yesterday in the Oval Office to a number of the people, he thinks he's doing a great job and glad he's here. Look, I was making a joke just before we started. The chaos that I see most this morning, I left 3 preschoolers and a bunch of flashlights with the power out at my house. It was pretty chaotic, and certainly far more chaotic early this morning than when I got to the office.
Chief of Staff General John Kelly held an off-camera briefing with reporters on Friday and talked about the Rob Porter scandal. He tried to clarify the timeline between statements. He also tried to clarify when he knew the extent of the domestic abuse allegations against Porter and when the FBI sent over reports to the White House. He didn't clear up a whole lot, but in regards to whether or not he planned to quit over it, Kelly said, quote, "I have absolutely nothing to even consider resigning over." President Trump is set to attend the Gridiron Dinner in D.C. The Gridiron Club is one of the oldest journalism clubs in the city. Every year when they have their annual dinners, they typically invite the president. Last year, President Trump did not go. He sent Vice President Mike Pence instead. This year, he is set to attend that dinner. In West Palm Beach, Florida, I'm Ellison Barber, Fox News.
Ellison, thank you.
All right, now on top of everything Ellison talked about, it was a turbulent week as well for Jared Kushner. Not only did the president's senior advisor and son-in-law lose his top secret security clearance, but reports claim the federal investigators are now trying to determine whether he used his family business to influence policy. At the White House, Sarah Sanders shooting down claims that Kushner's job may be in jeopardy.
Jared's still a valued member of the administration, and he's going to continue to focus on the work that he's been doing, and we're going to continue pushing forward on that front as well.
Let's bring in Philip Wegman now as a commentary writer for Washington Examiner. Boy, what a week. Philip, on the Jared Kushner story, I guess the question is, the Wall Street Journal raised this on its editorial page, but the question now is whether or not Kushner has become a political liability for his father-in-law. What do you say?
Well, in about a year, Jared Kushner has gone from the, political golden boy of this administration to that political liability. He hasn't been able to pass his FBI background check, which is one of the reasons why he was downgraded with security clearance. He hasn't been able to gain the respect in foreign policy circles, which is one of the reasons why foreign nations see his inexperience as a liability to be exploited. And he also has not been able to dodge very serious pay-to-play allegations. Just this last week, we saw that Citigroup and Apollo met with the White House only to give $500 million in loan guarantees to the Kushner family. So if you're Trump, you've got to love the boy. He's your son. He's been with you. But you have to ask yourself, is the nepotism really worth it? Okay, so say that you're right about all of that. And again, we don't know that that you are, but say that you are right, that he has become a liability and that the president comes to realize that, and that Jared Kushner does leave the administration and that his wife leaves as well, Ivanka Trump. What would that mean? How would that change the dynamic inside the White House, do you think? Well, I think that the facts and the headlines already show that Jared is a liability. He doesn't have a single significant policy achievement to hang his hat on right now. Okay, so what if he leaves? What if he leaves? How would that change things? If he leaves, then what we see is that Trump is finally going to not deal with a downgraded Kushner, but rather hand all of the policy reins over to Kelly. And if you look at what Kelly has been able to do since he came to the Oval Office, yes, there's been the Rob Porter fiasco, but for the most part, he has been able to bring a semblance of order out of discord. So I agree with one writer who said that Kelly really is the indispensable man. And if Jared and Ivanka leave, that clears the road for him. Okay, I get what you're saying about order, and that's certainly what General Kelly's been credited with by those who support him. But what about policy? Because you think about what Jared and to some extent Ivanka, represent in that White House, is this so-called globalist wing, right? And in the report we had earlier, we were talking about trade. They are said to be allied with the president's top economic advisor, Gary Cohn. There have been reports, as was alluded to, that maybe he's thinking about leaving as well. So are we seeing a big-time shift in this administration when it comes to policy, obviously referring specifically to economic policy after what we heard about trade this week? Absolutely. Well, if personnel is policy, then their absence from the West Wing definitely would leave a vacuum, and you would see sort of more of the old hands, people who have been there from the beginning, folks like Stephen Miller and Sarah Huckabee Sanders. They would be stepping in here. But look, right now there are reports that Jared and Ivanka are being pushed out by Kelly, even at the president's behest. We don't know if those are true or not, but if you're Jared and Ivanka, you've got to be looking around for allies, and we've already seen Hope Hicks leave, and now we also saw Josh Raphael leave. So they don't have allies at a moment they desperately need them. And the other question, to get even further ahead of ourselves, and when you're doing having a speculative conversation like that, it's hard to avoid it. But the other question is, once you get to that point,
Who comes next? I mean, who replaces some of these people that leave? Is it kind of a brain drain or a talent search? Is that a real problem you think this administration faces for the rest of the year and further on than that?
Well, we've definitely seen significant attrition coming out of the West Wing. A lot of folks have hung it up after a year for one reason or another. What we know as far as the president's hiring mindset is he values loyalty above all else. He wants people who have been loyal to him during the campaign and now during his time in office. Not people who are going to second guess him behind his back, but people who are going to help shape his thoughts into concrete policy. And right now, once Jared and Ivanka, if they do step away, there's going to be a very limited group of people for the president to pick from.
That loyalty argument, though, that would be the argument in favor of keeping, obviously your son-in-law or your daughter, right? So maybe that is, especially, I wonder if Hope Hicks leaving makes it more likely that Jared and or Ivanka stay because of that,
And the president certainly likes having both, his daughter and his son-in-law there because they are on board with his vision. They've been on board with him during the campaign, and he doesn't have to think, is this person just doing this so that they can turn around and talk to reporters, or is this person just doing this so that they can turn around and go get a plushy job on K Street or in some think tank? They're in this for the long haul because they're his kids.
Philip Wegman, Washington Examiner, thanks for covering all this ground with us. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right.
Fox News alert and an update now on that incident we told you about. It happened outside the White House earlier today. The Secret Service is now saying the man who shot himself outside the fence along the north lawn has died. No one else was injured. President Trump was in Florida at the time when it happened and has been briefed on the situation.
Now it's time to go to the Fox Extreme Weather Center. The governor of Massachusetts declaring a state of emergency. This after that powerful nor'easter really hammered the Northeast. Strong winds, massive flooding throughout the area yesterday. Power lines knocked down, and air travel and ground travel, for that matter, was disrupted, to put it mildly. Passengers scrambling to make alternative plans.
Cancel flight.
So now what?
Take me home. I gotta figure something out.
Boarded the flight at 12:20, sat on the runway until 3:30 or so. Flight was canceled.
All right, Brian Yennis is live at LaGuardia Airport in New York, one of the places that was a mess yesterday. How are things now, Brian?
Hi, Connell. Well, things are looking pretty good here, but travel chaos aside, I do want to update people on this state of emergency. Virginia and Maryland had declared a state of emergency. Well, now the governor of Massachusetts has joined those states in declaring that emergency, which means expedited federal funds will be on their way in the recovery process moving forward after this major nor'easter caused some major flooding along the coast of Massachusetts. Places like Quincy and Scituate especially. The National Guard continues to evacuate residents out of Quincy, which is just southeast of Boston today. The Guard and first responders have reportedly made about 250 rescues there since yesterday. Some 140 guardsmen and 53 guard vehicles are on the ground in Massachusetts. And coastal communities like Quincy and Scituate have seen about 15 feet of water submerging vehicles, people's homes and businesses, roadways, and some 340,000 homes and businesses in the state of Massachusetts do not have power at this time. About 1 million people nationwide are without power. Now, at least 5 people along the East Coast have been killed by this storm by falling trees and branches, including an 11-year-old boy in upstate New York. A tree falling on the home, killing the boy inside. This is the second time in as many months the Northeast has been hit with a so-called bomb cyclone. It's a nor'easter that undergoes rapid intensification. Snow, high winds and flooding hitting Pennsylvania, Virginia, New York, and Maryland as well. Today, there are about 600 cancellations at the airports. That is much better than what we saw yesterday, and airlines are scrambling to rebook flights. Here at LaGuardia, about 48 cancellations. It was 600 yesterday, and that was a part of the 3,400 flights that were canceled nationwide because of the storm yesterday. Some still flew, though, despite the high winds. Take a look at this video. This is a plane that is attempting to take off at Reagan Airport airport yesterday. You can see the gusts of winds moving and swaying the plane. I mean, that is just a scary sight. And then there was another plane that actually had to abort their landing at Reagan National Airport yesterday. At the very last moment, a Southwest airline plane decided not to land, and they landed 10 minutes later safely. That just gives you an idea. Reagan Airport saw some 40 to 60 mile an hour winds straight for 15 hours long is how long they saw those types of winds. So it has been a precarious situation in the Northeast, and the big story now is those power lines that are down. It is cold outside, and people are without power and without heat. So that's what people have in their minds right now moving forward.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the next couple of days, power will be restored, Connell.
And to your point, Brian, this is it was early January, right? This same area. And I was up in the Massachusetts coast to cover it. I think you may have been as well. The bomb cyclone hit almost that same area, Quincy and Scituate and what have you. All right, we'll keep an eye on it. Brian, thank you. Brian Yennis out at LaGuardia.
Lawmakers left scrambling on what to do next after President Trump appears to send mixed messages on gun control, what some Democrats are now planning in the wake of the deadly Parkland shooting. Plus, Russia's Vladimir Putin making a chilling claim about his country's nuclear arsenal during his State of the Nation speech. So how serious is the threat?
Our missile defense has never been about them. We need to ensure we have a credible nuclear deterrent. And we are confident that we're prepared to do, and we're prepared to defend this nation no matter what.